Hi everyone, I'm Kai and welcome to another episode of Bake It Better. And today I'm going to show you how to make pâte à choux, which sounds really fancy. It's got a French title, but you can totally make it at home. It's just 5 ingredients and you can use it to make so many different things, from cream puffs and eclairs to even savory dishes too. So I'm going to show you how to master this technique. So to begin, we need 1 cup of water, and we are going to cook this dough on the stovetop. And that helps bring it all together. And then once we add the eggs, we'll move over to our mixer. So some pâte à choux recipes might call for milk instead of water, or a combination of water and milk. You can feel free to make up whatever combination you want. The milk will add a tenderizing factor to the pastry, and it also will help it brown a little bit better. I love my cream puffs to have a little bit of a crunch on the outside. It just contrasts nicely with the cream filling. So I'm using all water, but you want 1 cup or 227 grams of any combination of water and milk. Then we're going to add 1 stick of butter, unsalted unless you like a little bit of a sweet and salty combination. And then we'll let this melt and bring it to a boil. So as soon as your liquid and your butter come to a boil, things are going to move pretty quickly, so I'm just going to talk through the steps really briefly. So once it comes to a boil, remove your pot from the heat, and you're going to add in your flour and your salt all at once. Some people might get a little bit nervous and kind of add it in portions because they're used to that with cakes and things. Add it all at once because, like I said, things go fast. So I'm using all-purpose flour as well as just a pinch of salt. Well, a little more than a pinch. It's like a 1/4 teaspoon. And the recipe that I'm using, by the way, is called Cream Puffs and Eclairs on the King Arthur Flour website. So head over there for the full measurements and everything like that. So let's turn this back on and get our butter and liquid boiling. When I add the flour and the salt to this mixture, it's going to start to come together into a dough, and that's why some people call this choux pastry or pastry dough, choux dough. So what you're going to do is cook the mixture back over the heat for about a minute or so until the dough follows your spatula or your spoon and comes together. There'll also be a little film that forms on the bottom of the pot. So we're already boiling here, so I'm just going to take this off real quick and add my flour and my salt all at once, and then move it back to the heat. And so very quickly, I'm going to keep stirring. And this can take anywhere from 1 to 2 minutes for the dough to come together. You want to cook it enough so that you don't get a raw flour taste in your final dough, but you also don't want to overcook it because that will evaporate too much moisture and you'll end up with a really stiff dough that's difficult to pipe, and your cream puffs won't puff as well, or whatever you're using the pastry dough for. So make sure you get all the raw flour incorporated. You don't want to let this sit still. If you do, it might burn, or it just might start to get too hot in some places. So you can also hear that little crackling and snapping noise. That's a great sign that your pastry dough is on the right path. You can see the film is starting to form in the middle here. That's a great sign. We're just going to keep moving this around the pot. If you don't cook this enough, your pastry dough might be really loose because there's too much moisture in it. So you want just the right amount of cooking, which sometimes intimidates bakers. They say, I don't know if it's fully cooked, but you'll know. This will smell, it starts to smell amazing. It starts to smell like something delicious baking. It takes on an aroma. You'll hear the crackling, the snapping. You'll get the film at the bottom, and the dough will start to come together. You can see that it's pretty much all homogeneous now. Just gonna give it 1 or 2 more stirs. And then take a deep breath. This part can be a little bit exciting, but just go for it. This is the fun part of making pastry dough. And we're done. So then take it off the heat. And now it's time to add the eggs. But if we were to add eggs to this hot mixture right now, we would end up with a giant scrambled egg with chunks of dough in it, and that's not what we want. We want pâte à choux. So we need to let this cool for about 5 to 10 minutes. I'm gonna show you a shortcut. You need that. But it should be cool enough that you can stick your finger in it and it just feels warm. It shouldn't feel too hot. Or if you have an instant read thermometer like this, you should see about 125. If it's cooler than 125, you won't have to worry about your eggs scrambling. So if you want your pâte à choux in the oven quicker, you can move over to your mixer rather than just letting it wait for it to cool naturally. So you can put this in your mixer and just let it beat without any eggs in it at all. And run the paddle so that it starts to cool. Just kind of like stirring a brownie batter or something like that can make it cool down faster. This cools down the pastry dough. So I'm just gonna let this run. You can come see what it looks like now. I can feel the bowl's pretty hot through here. I'm just gonna turn this on and let it run for a couple minutes so that it cools off. So our pâte à choux has been cooling for a couple minutes while the mixer is running, and the temperature of the dough, I'm just checking to make sure that it's below 125. If you don't have a thermometer, you can just use your finger, and remember it should feel warm but not too hot. And some bakers might be nervous about over beating or mixing the choux pastry too much and making it really tough by cooling it down faster. But because there's so much fat in the form of butter in this dough, it really prevents the gluten proteins from forming together tightly. So don't worry too much about ending up with a tough dough. So now it's time to add our eggs. So we are going to use room temperature eggs. That's really important. You don't want to use eggs that are right from the fridge. They won't homogenize as well. So we're going to add our eggs one at a time, and you will let the batter or the dough incorporate while this mixes. Just one egg at a time. And this is a moment where you just need to breathe, because as you add more eggs, this is going to look like a curdled mess. By the time we add the third or fourth egg, it's just going to look slimy and like you don't even know what just happened. It's gonna be okay. I'll show you how to make it through to that final step. But right now I'm going to add one egg at a time after each one is incorporated, and then we'll show you what it looks like. I just added my fourth egg, and I want to show you what it looks like right now, because this is the moment when some bakers might panic. So this looks kind of slimy, it looks curdled, or what some bakers might call broken. It's gonna be okay, this is gonna be fine. At this moment, what you can do is scrape down the sides of the bowl and then just let it mix. So the physical power of the mixer will homogenize the dough and bring everything together. You just have to be patient and use the right speed, which is about medium high at this point. Should beat for about 2 minutes once the final egg is added. So that's what I'll do now. So this is what 2 minutes of mixing will do to the dough. It's beautiful, it's come together, it looks soft, not too stiff. So I'm just gonna scrape down the sides of the bowl. And at this point, you wanna check out the consistency of your pâte à choux, because it should be a very specific viscosity so that you get that puff in the oven that you're looking for. And if it's not quite right, don't worry, I'll show you how to fix that. So there's a few ways to test the consistency of your pâte à choux dough. One of the most common ways is to just use your paddle or a spatula and kind of move it around and then bring it up like this. And they call it sometimes the V test. So you wanna look at the shape of the drip. So the pâte à choux dough should be able to hold on your paddle without just kind of dolloping back in. That means you might need to add a little bit more flour, or maybe even next time you should have cooked that flour and butter mixture a little bit longer. You can also test it by using your clean hands and holding it between your fingers, and it should have some ability to stretch like this without just kind of falling over. And it should have some stickiness to it too. It shouldn't feel too stiff. So this looks pretty good. If it was looking too stiff, you could add a tablespoon of milk or water and just mix that in to loosen it up. because now we have gorgeous pâte à choux dough. So I can use this to make cream puffs, eclairs, any sort of cream puff tower. We have a lot of recipes on our website. One of my favorites is the raspberry almond puff. And you can use this to even make savory things now too. There's a recipe called Eclairs, which is where you fold Gruyere into this and you end up with these delicious little cheese puffs that make amazing appetizers or pastry. So this is super versatile. Remember, there's no sugar. You can use this to do so many things. In next week's video, I'll show you how to make pastry cream, and then we'll do a final assembly and make cream puffs and eclairs because those are my favorite. But just remember that pâte à choux is not that difficult. We only had 5 ingredients, and now you can practice and master this technique and you'll be able to bake it wonderfully. So good luck and happy baking.